as I shall be.
My friends, welcome back to our ECRA Circle of Solidarity and Mourning. Today we are privileged to have Reverend Michael Ware, our friend from North Shore Baptist, to teach us and to lead us in prayer and to inspire us. So Michael, nice to have you. And everybody, welcome back. And we look forward to our experience today.
Good morning, all. It is good to take this journey with you. I don't know that there will be as much teaching, as much as an experience that we will have hopefully over the next two sessions. This is part one of a session that actually will, God envisioned in me that will continue into tomorrow. So let us begin. Before I do that, I do want to let you know that there's going to be one portion in this where I'm going to be switching screens on you. I've already practiced it, so we'll see how it works. But there's going to be a music video, and I'll talk to you about that in a little bit. So, as I've been thinking about this piece about coming together for mourning and for a bit of solidarity, we have been mentioning the more recent names of those in the struggle, which rightly so. It's on the forefront of all of our minds. Those names who've been taken, and it's so often that we tend not to go back and realize when we talk about this struggle being a long struggle. To realize that this struggle has been an ongoing trajectory, and that there have been those who've come well before the names that we speak of right now, and Ahmaud Arbery and George Flood and Breonna Taylor. Yes, they are still bodies being placed and stacked on top of bodies that have come before them. And so today and tomorrow, I want to take us back, and particularly back as well to what we've been discussing a little bit about, is this whole sense about, this sense of police brutality. Because most often people will say, well, I don't know what they're upset about or why this is a concern, because, it's as if this has never happened before. And so, one of the things that I support is a group called the Equal Justice Initiative, which, for those of you who know, has been a group led by Brian Stevenson out of Montgomery, Alabama. And I have in my office, actually I'm going to grab it down. I have in my office the Equal Justice Initiative calendar. Mm-hmm. I get it every year, and I send it to certain folks every year. And the first time I got this calendar, I cried, because this calendar has on it every date of the year. It has what has happened in Black lives on that particular day. And so every day I look at it, I come to my office and I sit down and I look at this calendar and I pray, I mourn, I am sad. What was interesting was as I was been thinking about what I would talk to us about today, about these often forgotten names. When I looked at this calendar, I realized, yeah, that's where we ought to go today. So today we are going to talk about Jesse Thornton Lynch, and I hope that you all can see this. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask, there are three paragraphs, and I'm going to ask that we start, because the way this is listed on my screen is Rabbi Craig is at the top. Not that he's the top, but he's at the top. And Mary Jane, you're next, and Pastor Fred is after that. So I'm going to ask if each one of you would take the paragraph in order of your name and read it for us.
Thank you, Michael. June 21st, 1940. 26-year-old black man Jesse Thornton addressed a passing police officer by his name, Doris Rhodes. When the officer, a white man, overheard Mr. Thornton and ordered him to clarify his statement, Thornton attempted to correct himself by referring to the officer as Mr. Doris Rhodes. The officer hurled a racial slur at Mr. Thornton while knocking him to the ground and arresting him. Rhodes then walked Thornton into the city jail as a mob of white men formed just outside.
Thornton tried to escape and managed to flee a short distance while the mob quickly pursued, firing gunshots and throwing bricks, bats, and stones at him. Thornton was injured by gunfire and eventually collapsed. The mob dumped him into a truck and drove to an isolated street where he was dragged into a nearby swamp and shot again. Thornton's decomposing, vulture-ravaged body was found a week later by a local fisherman in the Patsaliga River near Tuskegee Institute.
Dr. Charles A.J. McPherson, a local leader in the Birmingham branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, wrote a detailed report on Thornton's lynching. Thurgood Marshall, then an attorney with NAACP, provided the Department of Justice with the report and requested a federal investigation. The Justice Department instructed Federal Bureau of Investigation to determine whether law enforcement or other officials were complicit in the lynching, but there is no record that anyone was ever prosecuted for Mr. Thornton's murder. Northeastern article.
June 21st, 1940. What comes up to you in either hearing this story and reading the story? What reactions do you have, if any?
It sounds a lot like Ray Shard, who was killed in a similar way the other day. He was minding his own business and got thrown to the ground and ran away and got killed. It's just, sounds like the same thing again.
I have a question, actually. What was, or maybe they don't never know, what did he do wrong?
He called in the South. Black Americans were not allowed
To address
you by your first name.
Oh, okay.
We're not allowed to do that. And matter of fact, I as a child growing up, it is why I learned the word yes, sir, and no, sir. I was trained as a child, even in the North. In Benton Harbor, I was trained never to address a white person by their name. I was trained to address them by sir or ma'am, but it was never, there was a certain code in which you were to act. And it's as stupid as that is, to be honest with you, it allowed them to do what they did. It was justifiable. I think you were going to say something, Rabbi.
Michael, thank you. What disturbs me about this as an American and as a Jewish American, we are on the precipice of World War. In particular, with a person in Hitler and a nation in Germany that
yes
decided that it was going to take over the world because of its own collective hatred, because of its sense of racial superiority. And we as a country got involved in that war to protect certain values that we deem precious, like freedom, like equality. And yet, in our very own spaces, we are acting just as badly.
More so in my mind, because it's been going on. Yeah, very valid point.
My sense is you kill one person, you kill the whole world. You ruin the whole world. So I feel like right within our own borders, where we fight for freedom and we fight for equality, it always seems ultimately, when you really put a microscope to it, that we are fighting for the freedom and equality of those deemed more free and more equal. Because you have examples relating to Jesse Thornton of blessed memory that reflect that his humanity was not just invisible, but it was worth destroying.
Yeah.
To those who did it. And too many people stood by.
Yes. Or joined in.
We fought a whole world war where lots of people died for these values, and yet the brutal and discomforting hypocrisy of it is that for hundreds of years of grotesque counterexamples, we got to get our priorities straight, Michael.
Yeah, we do. What alarms me about this article, my brothers and sisters, as well, is, and why, this would have happened in June 21, 1940. What's today? June 22nd. This is June 22nd of 2020, right? But look how much the police were engaged in the taking of this life and to the ignorance of this life. It would be the police officer who would instigate this going and escalating it all the way up to a man's death. And it would be the Justice Department who would deny justice. It just alarms me that we feel as though when we talk about these issues around the police and around the Black lives, that people tend to think, oh, this is a recent phenomenon, or this is something fairly new, or this has never happened before. And so often those names of a person like Jesse Thornton has long since passed. And as I read through this, I just can't get over the fact of how much of this was instigated, ignored, and let go by the justice system. And that has been what I hope and trust that this fight we're in now will continue to be about, is that it's time for justice to be done, and not so that a man dies. This man should not be dead, or should not have been dead in 1940 for this cause, but he would be. And it would be turned into this mob mentality.
Another thing that strikes me is the last paragraph, where it talks about Department of Justice. And at the present moment, I'm not so happy about all that's going on there at all.
Exactly. What is our Department of Justice doing right now?
Nothing. Well, they're doing a lot of things.
Protecting the president. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
It reminds me of our discussion last week as well. I wonder if this is an example of the 13th Amendment and how it can be used against Black bodies and Black lives, that, as soon as you criminalize a Black person, they're as good as losing their rights and maybe their life.
I'm glad you said that, Fred, because I did share our conversation with a set of members of our congregation around this 13th Amendment, and the excitement that, Rabbi, that we would be thinking about that as an undertaking, I was very pleasantly pleased to hear from these folks that I shared our conversation, not where our action will actually be at this point, but they're excited that we would even be talking about the getting rid of and changing the 13th Amendment. And I was like, yes. So just to let you know, I'm sharing our conversations with other members who are not on our calls, and I'm sharing it.
Well, thank you, Jane, for bringing that conversation to bear, and
Yes.
let's start fighting.
Yeah.
How about now?
Yeah. Now would be good. I want to say to you, Jane, I haven't listened to Saturday, so don't give me anything away yet. I'm going back and look at Saturday. Saturday is my taping day for worship, and then Father's Day kicked in. So this afternoon, I'm going to go back to Saturday. Okay, so don't give anything away. All right. Any other comments on this? Any other comments on this? Okay.
Thank you, Reverend Ware, for bringing Mr. Lynch's life into view and helping us to make not only his loss, but his life matter.
I trust we are. I trust we are. Because I believe in my tradition. Anytime you say a person's name, the lived spirit of that person continues to live on. So anytime that we say Jesse Thornton's name, Jesse's spirit is yet alive. It's when we stop saying someone's name that they truly die, because they die within us. Dr. Jane, I was wondering if you would read our prayer for the morning.
I'd be very pleased to. Thank you. For all those who woke this morning to the loneliness of bereavement, the empty bed or chair, an unaccustomed quietness, a life now incomplete, may they know your presence in the stillness of the day and through the love of friends who offer their condolence. And in the darker moments, may they reach out to hold your hand and feel the warmth of the one who has already passed from death to life to welcome others into God's kingdom.
Amen.
My friends, one of the things that has great meaning for me, and I know it does for Rabbi because he loves to play, is music. And one of the things that has been very instrumental in Black lives has been music. Music has been a way of expression, a way of protest, a way of lament, a way of speaking to the ills of the day in a way that would allow those of us who are Black to understand, but those abusers who are white to not take offense. And so music has been a very pronounced way for us to communicate one with another, our lament, our sorrow, our sadness, our power to make a change. And so this day I'm going to stop share because I need to show, I have a video that I want us to watch. And I'm going to go back and to share with you again. Unfortunately, we have to do this because of the way my system is. So sorry about that.
But a big thank you to your daughter for helping you.
Help me figure it out. Exactly.
And get to this point.
Now, there are two questions that are going to come to you. So I'm going to tell you what they are so that you, I just want you to watch the video. I just want you to watch the video, listen to the words, listen to the lyrics, pay attention to the scenery, and then we will talk. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Here's the questions. What did you see or hear? And what is the challenge for change? I will give you a couple of things. Marvin Gaye was a person who spoke to the social ills of his time. And this video was done roughly around 1971, 72. And so this is why we're seeing the apartment buildings where we were living, because quite frankly, that was where most blacks would be forced to live in the cities, is in the high rise. And I believe this is Harlem.
Oh, okay.
Just so you know, I believe this is Harlem. So what did you see and or hear?
Maybe just kind of a surface first read of it, but I saw a lot of poverty, of living conditions that were different than mine. You know, kids sleeping two to a bed, kids sleeping outside. I thought maybe, you know, it's a hot summer. It's got no air conditioning, and you know, just not a lot of furniture and things in homes, cockroaches, you know, kids playing on mattresses discarded outside to, you know, have some joy in their day. Yeah, and then all the high rises, like you mentioned too, that Black community was forced to live in. So, yeah, a lot of hardship. I also saw my own mind trying to maybe romanticize it and think that, you know, at least there's some kind of safe space here that Black people can be themselves and be together, whereas going out in a white community might have been less safe. So I may be romanticizing it as well, you know? But yeah, really hard life and just day-to-day existence, you know, and how often that poverty keeps us in that place and it's hard to get out of it.
I saw a lot of darkness, and it wasn't just because it was black and white at that time. And as you mentioned, the closeness, the high rise, everything was kind of taken from the top. And you mentioned that was Harlem. My first thought was Cabrini Greens, which was the place here in Chicago, which has since been torn down. Look similar, I guess.
It is similar, by the way, because it was duplicated across the nation in our major cities, right?
I see.
Slums were built in the same fabric. So you're correct. And I first thought it was Chicago too, because until I saw the metro train, because we don't call ourselves that. And I also noticed some of the other features and went, nah, that wasn't Chicago.
Okay.
But yeah.
I think what strikes me is both in the lyrics and kind of is a sense of being stuck, of the limitations being so overwhelming that whether it's finances or whether it's the challenge of the police and things like that, that there isn't a way.
Yeah. That cry is still the same cry. So that I thank you, all of you say some great stuff. The lyrics, though, also just add to that sense of the picture. The visual pictures tell us what's going on, but the lyrics also tell us of that sense of there's nowhere to go. It makes me want to holler, throw up both my hands, because I have nowhere to go. What am I going to do? I make the money, it's taken. I can't pay my taxes. I can't pay my bills. I can't do anything. And then you want me to go off, by the way, remember we still have Vietnam. That's where to go off the war is about, because Vietnam is still happening. And so you have this whole thing going on where you're just like, wow, what do you do? Thank you, Jane, for picking up on that. Because the lyrics were speaking to us as Black Americans about our own sense of lament. It actually lifted us up then, because it at least acknowledged what we were feeling, what we were experiencing, even though we couldn't do a doggone thing about it. Yeah.
If I may, and I'm feeling so badly because I have to leave in a few minutes, but one of the things that struck me in the last few weeks was a commentator talking about that the power of the current Black Lives Matter movement is that there is no clear leadership, and how I'm going to say this badly, but like how, for lack of a better word, effective our government has been at removing Black leaders, and whether it's Fred Hampton here or whether, I mean, that really, I think very much, there's a reason that, in some respect, there's a reason that kind of in our history books, like the civil rights movement ends with King, right? Is because any other leader who's come forward, I mean, has fled the country, has, wound up in prison, has been shot in their home, our government has been exceedingly effective at keeping the movement from going on. And so that was so powerful to me to hear somebody say that the power of the Black Lives Matter movement is that it doesn't have a leader. It doesn't have somebody that you can remove.
Exactly.
Over.
Right.
And so to me, the challenge for change, I think that that's the hope for change, is that there isn't, somebody that we can remove from the picture and therefore, maintain the status quo, but that if we are united, if we are moving together, if there isn't one person that you can remove from the picture, then maybe progress is actually at hand.
Yeah. Thank you. That is very clear. And it's one of those things that you're the person that is spot on, and you're spot on, that the fact that there is no single leader means a movement cannot die because of a single person. And we've been talking about that in the Black culture now for the last 3 or 4 years. Every in the last 5 years, we've been talking about the fact that because there's no single leader, you can't who are you gonna get rid of? Who do you attack? And because you're right, that's what's happened. All of our leaders have either been in prison, they've been jailed, they've been killed, they've been run out the country. There have been, it's been relentless. So thank you. That is well articulated. Thank you. Rabbi.
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you all for your insights. I'm inspired and eager to add from my own perspective, which I must confess felt, because I was witnessing this in virtual space, I was bearing witness from a distance. I felt very far away from not only the reality in 1971, although I was only 4 years old.
You were a young whippersnapper.
Yeah. I still feel far away as I bear witness to the vulnerability and the poverty and the resilience through the vulnerability and poverty. I saw that in this scene, but it seems fitting that the initial lyrics to Inner City Blues are rockets, moonshots, spend it on the have-nots. Money we make it, for we see it, you take it. At the time, one of the great aspirations was space travel, and we had already gotten to the moon 2 years earlier. And it was a powerful experience for Americans and a very expensive experience, and one that used precious resources to advance our space program and our technological aspirations, and yet on the backs of American citizens, some of whom are living in abject poverty, profound vulnerability, in a reality where their health and their bodies are in danger, where people place people of color in danger because of the color of their skin, because of the racism that enables and empowers that behavior. And so we might as well be on the moon, some of us, particularly white in color, because it feels that it's that far away from our everyday experience. Not just through the internet, but like we might as well be on the moon. And that, I think, is inherent, the essential challenge. Brian Stevens talks about proximity. Mm-hmm. Proximity for reconciliation. Reconciliation is something that can't happen without proximity, without getting into the vulnerability, without taking ownership for contributing to that vulnerability, without contributing to a reality that puts people's lives on the line because of the color of their skin. We need to come back from the moon. We have to get out of virtual space into real space to be a force for good and to make real change. So what's the action in all that? It's an attitude shift and perspective shift. We have to own up that sometimes we might as well be on the moon in terms of our engagement. Mm-hmm. I'm speaking as a white person.
You're speaking as a black person. Huh. I'm saying that because as you're speaking, these are the exact same things we were saying as black people. In 1971, I was in junior high school. We were speaking the same things in our households. Marvin just put it to lyrics. You are just stating what we were stating in our houses as a Jewish rabbi today. This is exactly what we were saying. Exactly.
We're all in this together.
Yeah, we are.
The other thing that was going on then too, I think, is a lot of talk about integration, of neighborhoods, and especially it was a time of trying to work out school busing.
Which we had just done in the end of 1968. You're right. We're still struggling with it at that point.
Yeah, it was a huge struggle. I think ultimately, white people in power just kind of kiboshed the whole thing, and it really never happened in any meaningful way. I mean, a little bit here and there, and just that, fear and racism, and it never really happened. So, I mean, how to come together. There was a moment when we felt like that was starting, but it never really happened.
Yeah.
Separate. Still on the moon.
Yeah. I would encourage you that if you ever have time to YouTube the video and let's listen to the lyrics again, and because it speaks to everything we're talking about. Obviously, you heard the lyrics, and it's a song that I think that when we're looking at and talking about race, that one of the other pieces that gets lost is not only those names of, but also those musicians who were out on that front line, giving their voice to the cause, and and their names also get lost in the what's happening as well. And Marvin was out there. He was singing those love ballads, but he was on the flip side. His music was on the social stratus of what was going on with Black people in America. And so, thank you all for all of that.
Reverend Ware, may I just make one mention? I was just thinking of Marvin Gaye of blessed memory, and what a prophet that he was and still remains.
Yes.
And it's not lost on me that he died of gun violence.
Absolutely.
Within his own family, sadly.
Yes, yes.
But one challenge for change is the gun violence.
Huge.
That
And
we have to stop.
What did Sister Mary start us with today? 99 shootings over the weekend.
Yes.
And we are not. Guns are floated in and out of Chicago like the Chicago River flowing from the lake or to the lake. They're prevalent everywhere.
Yes. I think that we can combat racism. We can champion anti-racism. We can call for effective policing reforms. We can demilitarize the police. We can put resources into different professional approaches to making society better and safer and more secure. We have got to meet the gun challenge.
We've got to. We've got to.
That's in some ways what makes this all so lethal.
Mm-hmm.
It would be bad enough without the guns.
Right.
And we would have to spend our lifetimes making serious changes in the most anti-racist ways. But the guns just really make it so much more dangerous.
Yes, they do. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hola kavod, as we say, all the respect.
All right. I think I have one more piece for us. Yes. And so this is a poem written, let's see if I can get this off of my screen, get this out of my way. Oops, sorry about that. That I'm going to ask us to read, that we're going to take parts in reading. If I can get this back, there we go. It's in honor and praise to Black Rage, and it's written by Brian Tyler Coles. And so there are 5 of us. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so I'm just going to ask that we read alternately. I will begin. We'll have Father Rabbi Craig read, and then Sister Mary, you'll read, and then Pastor Fred, and then we'll just rotate till we're done. So I will begin. Deep in the shadow of night, down near the crossroads and cemetery gates, with bitter liquor and cigar smoke wafting, I greet you. Upon the floor before shrines, following the names of the ancestors being uttered, I greet you.
You are the sacred and righteous rage of my people, echoing throughout time from the lands of our elders, from depths of the oceans. I hear you now.
You call out to us in the swirling winds, in the clamoring of lightning, in the crashing of waves, in the flow of rivers, in the rustling of forests, in clouds that move across the heavens, in the drumbeat of the earth.
You are present in the cries of Black Lives Matter and no justice, no peace. You shimmer brightly in the flames of buildings crumbling to the ground as they are consumed in flame. In the calls for protests and direct action, in the stirring of pots, the laughter of children, in the tears and prayers of guardians.
You are Black rage, holy and sacred, unbound and unapologetic. You swell in the hips and the breasts, in the of curves, cheekbones and nostrils, the beast of hearts and pulsating thoughts, in exhaustion, in frustration, in numbness, in mobilization. In life, you name yourself as good.
Holy and sacred, Black rage, be ever present in our struggle for liberation, in our work to be, to love, and to exist.
Guide our movements in all their forms as we strive to be good ancestors, ensuring that our descendants might look upon our memory with favor. For you, for them, invite us to live without fear.
Dear holy and sacred Black rage, give life to this valley of dry bones. Move like fire upon our spirits. Stir within us now and forevermore. Amen.
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 And there it is.
Amen. Amen.
Thank
All
you.
respect, Reverend Ware, dear Michael, thank you.
Thank you. We will
Thank
join
you.
you tomorrow.
Okay.
Same bad channel. All right.
Thanks, go.
Thanks for stirring us.
Stay in the fight, one and all. Stay in the fight.
Thank you. You too.
Struggle on. Blessings.
Blessings.
Take care.
Blessings.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Take care.